morning, students. We are discussing theme 2, writing and city life, and today we are going to discuss part 4. In our previous classes, we had made discussions on the various aspects of city life in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia was the earliest city in the world, and it is located in between the two rivers named the Tigris and Euphrates, which are at present in the Republic of Iraq. Today, we shall make discussion on the social life of the city of Mesopotamia. It is not possible to get all the informations about the social life of the city in the period of 3000 BC. Part which we get from the archaeological evidences that are found in Mesopotamia, we will make discussions on that. Life in the city, the title of the discussion. There existed social distinction among the people living in the city. Now, when we go to discuss about a society, first of all, we must know about the social distinction, whether there existed any distinction among the people of the city on the basis of their social status or material status and so on. So, in respect of Mesopotamia, our main sources are the archaeological evidences like the ruins of the buildings and the burials and the clay tablets or the written records that were found in the ruins of the city of Mesopotamia. From all these sources, we had made an assumption about the social life of the people of Mesopotamia or the city people of Mesopotamia. And from there, we had come to know that there existed social distinction among the people living in the city. It is known from the various types of burials of the deceased persons of the city. Now, the people who were dead, then they had buried the dead bodies underground. This was their social custom. And there were differences in respect of the system of burials that are found from the ruins of the city of Mesopotamia. For example, in the city of Ur, a number of burials are found, but it is noticed that there are differences in respect of the system of burials which are found mainly in the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. Along with some dead bodies, enormous wealth is found buried. For example, jewelry, gold vessels, wooden musical instruments inlaid with shells and lapis lazuli, ceremonial daggers, etc. It is seen that in the burials, some dead bodies are accompanied by some valuable goods. For example, jewelry, gold vessels, wooden musical instruments which are decorated with shells and precious stones like lapis lazuli. There were the ceremonial daggers, gold-made daggers, etc. were given along with the dead bodies within the burial. Most probably these were the dead bodies of some kings and queens of Ur. who were above the common people both socially and materially. Since some valuable articles were attached to the dead bodies, even in the burials, so we may assume that the people who were dead, that means the dead bodies were of the peoples who were not the ordinary people. The dead bodies were of either the kings or the queens of Ud, who were above the common people both socially and materially. Riches given with their dead bodies indicate the fact. Since the riches that are given with the dead bodies, it is indicated by this fact. Perhaps these valuable articles were the favorites of the deceased king or the queen, and so these were given even after death with them. The ordinary people were perhaps buried in the town cemetery, which is found in the city of Ud. For the ordinary people, in the town there was a common cemetery, and there the ordinary peoples were buried ordinarily. No valuable riches were found attached to their dead bodies. It indicates that these were the dead bodies of the common people who did not possess enough wealth. They had did not have much wealth, and their dead bodies were buried in a very ordinary manner, and no valuable riches were given along with them. So it is indicated that these dead bodies belong to the common people. The people of the royal families were also found buried in the town cemetery. In the town cemetery, the people of the royal families were also found buried. But they are, how do you know that they were the people of the royal families? Because in their burials, the valuable goods were there. A few individuals were found buried under the floors of the ordinary houses. Perhaps they were from the poor families. And some people were found buried under the floors of their own houses. Perhaps they could not afford to get a land in the town cemetery. Most probably, to get a land for burial in the town cemetery, some money matter was needed, was attached. So there were some burials which were made within the house of the common people, and most probably the dead bodies were from the poor families, and so they could not afford to bury in the town cemetery even. We know from the legal texts, disputes, inheritance matters, etc., that there existed nuclear families, usually comprising a man, his wife, and their children in a house. Now, how were their families? From the clay tablets. Clay tablets, they contain some legal texts. Some legal matters were there on the clay tablets, written on the clay tablets. So these were the matters, these were the texts relating to disputes, inheritance matters, etc. And from there we come to know the families of the cities were the nuclear families. Usually a man, his wife and their children lived in a house. Unlike India. In India, the original system was the joint family system. 2 or 3 generations used to live together, but in Mesopotamian life, the people lived in nuclear families, unlike India. Father was the head of the family, and the society was perhaps patriarchal. And it is indicated from various sources that the society was patriarchal. The male persons dominated the society. Father was therefore the children used to adopt their father's surname, and father was the head of the family, and the society was patriarchal. Procedures of marriage. Now, how the marriage used to take place. Procedures of marriage is known very little. Now, when we go to study a society, the system of marriage is very important point to be known. Procedures of marriage is known very little. A declaration was made from the parents of the bride expressing their willingness to give marriage. At first, from the bride's family, a declaration was collected from the groom's family. And in this declaration, they expressed their willingness to give marriage. Then, gifts were given from the groom's house to the bride's house. Gifts were given from the groom's house to the bride's house. At the time of wedding, gifts were exchanged by both the parties to each other. Then when the wedding took place, then the bride's family used to give gifts to the groom's family. Groom's family used to give gifts to the bride's family. They ate together. It was a very enjoyable ceremony, so they used to sit together and ate together. And offerings were made to the god in the temple. To make it sacred something, they used to make offerings to the god in the temple. Most probably they used to sit in the temple for marriage. When the mother-in-law came to fetch the bride from her parents' house, the bride was given the shares of her father's property. Now, most probably at the time of marriage, the bride was not taken to the groom's family. She was taken after some days to the groom's family, and at that time, the mother-in-law used to come to take the bride from her parents' house to the groom's house. At that time, the bride was given the shares of her father's property. Father's fields, house, herds, etc. were inherited by the sons only. But she was given the share of only the movable property. For example, the jewelry and all, these were given to her. But the father's field, house, herds, which are the immovable property, they were inherited by the sons only. The daughter was not given that share. That means the daughter had no right to inherit the father's house. Excavation of the ordinary house of the city of Ur was made from 1930 CE. I had told in my, most probably in the first class, that when the excavation of the Mesopotamian city started, the researchers of Europe, they tried to relate it to Bible. And from that point of view, they made the excavation at the beginning. So at that stage only, the big constructions were excavated and studied. Later on, entire thing became changed, I have discussed, and the ordinary houses started to be excavated from 1930 onwards. In the places where there were the ordinary houses, the streets were not wide enough for the passing of the wheat carts. Now, where there were the houses of the ordinary people, there were the streets, and the streets were not wide enough. Even the wheat carts could not pass through these streets. These were the narrow streets. Therefore, the ordinary houses could not be reached by the wheelers. Most probably in the ordinary houses, the wheelers or the carts like vehicles could not reach. So, sacks of grain or firewood would have been reached in those houses on donkey back. So, some heavy goods were carried to the houses. For example, the sacks of grain or firewood, they were reached in the houses on donkey back. Donkey was used to carry the heavy goods from the streets to the houses. This is a sort of town planning, what I am expressing now. The irregular shapes and sizes of the house plots, narrow streets, etc. indicate that there existed no town planning. Now, the shapes of the houses, the sizes of the house plots, these were irregular. That means they were not similar to each other. The streets were also narrow. All these things indicate that the Mesopotamian cities were not made according to a plan, or there existed no town planning. So here again a distinction may be noticed with Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, the two cities. I hope you know about these two cities. These are the famous two cities, prehistoric cities of India, and there the excavation is made, and from this excavation we come to know that Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, the two cities in India, these were well planned. There existed a beautiful town planning, but in case of Mesopotamia, it is seen that the cities were larger in size than Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, but there existed no town planning. Unlike Mohenjo-daro, there existed no street drains. Now, in Mohenjo-daro, you will see it in your next class, that is in HS second year. We shall discuss this in details. In Mohenjo-daro and in Harappa, there are the wide streets along with the well-planned drains. But here in the Mesopotamian cities, it was not like this. There existed no street drains. Within the houses, there were drains and clay pipes. Within the houses, there were some drains and clay pipes for the passing of water from the wastewater from the house. The roofs of the houses were found sloping towards courtyard. Now, the houses were constructed in such a way that the roofs of the houses were sloping downward towards the courtyard of the house, not towards the streets. Thus, the rainwater dropped in the courtyard within the house and flew through the clay pipes or drains in the swamps. And rainwater dropped in the courtyard, and from courtyard it flew through the clay pipes or drains in the swamps. Now, what are the swamps? Swamps are the covered basins in the ground of inner courtyard. The swamps were there in the inner courtyard, and all the rainwater used to go to the swamps. Streets were in this way saved from being too slushy. In this way, streets were saved from being too slushy. They did not become slippery. People perhaps threw the wastes of their houses on the streets to be trodden under feet. Now, all the houses had some wastes every day, and the people used to throw the wastes of the houses on the streets to be trodden under feet. They wanted the waste to be trodden under feet. It raised the level of the streets. It naturally raised the level of the streets time to time. So, threshold of the houses also needed to be raised over time. So, when the streets level raised time to time, so naturally the threshold of the houses also needed to be raised over time. Light came in the rooms through the doors, not through the windows. There existed no windows. Light came in the rooms through the doors. Doors were opened towards the courtyard, not towards the streets, perhaps for privacy. Doors of the houses were open towards the courtyard, but not towards the streets, so that nobody can come straight away from the street to the houses. In this way, the doors were made, and it was perhaps for maintaining privacy in the houses. As recorded in a tablet found in Ur, there existed superstitions in respect of the construction of houses. There existed superstition in respect of construction of houses. Till today, we have some superstitions while we construct our houses in respect of the face of the house, doors of the house. We have many superstitions. In this way, these people had also superstitions in respect of the construction of houses, and it is recorded in a clay tablet. It was believed that a house with a raised threshold would bring wealth. If a house had a raised threshold, it would bring wealth. They believed like this. A front door not opened towards another house was lucky. A front door of a house which was not open to another house, it was lucky. If the main wooden doors of a house was opened outwards instead of inward, the wife of that house would be torment to her husband, unfaithful to her husband. In this way, they believed like they had some superstitions in respect of the construction of houses. Conclusion. From today's discussion, we have come to know about the society of Mesopotamia to a certain extent. To a certain extent, we have come to know about the society of Mesopotamia along with, to some extent, regarding the town planning. It is found that there existed social differences among the people of the cities of Mesopotamia. We have seen that there existed the differences between the rich and poor, between the upper class and lower class among the people of the cities of Mesopotamia. There was an elite group who were superior both socially and economically than the common people. Now, it is very clear from the burials that there existed an elite group who were socially and equally, who belonged to the upper classes, and that they were not same to the common people. It is known from the various kinds of burial system. The king and his family belong to the superior group. Naturally, the king and his family belong to the upper class. There existed a definite system of marriage. They had a definite system of marriage. The marriage institution had developed by this time. The society was perhaps patriarchal. That we had come to know about the daughters' shares during the time of marriage, inheritance of property and all we had seen, and it indicates that the society was patriarchal. There were well constructed brick houses, but no town planning. There existed brick houses, sometimes well constructed, but there existed no town planning. Wide streets, their streets were not wide, or there was no elaborate drainage system. There existed superstitious beliefs in respect of the construction of houses. So, now you shall see, I have given a picture This is a picture that will describe the kind of social distinctions existed in Mesopotamia. At the top, in the triangle, it is written king and nobility. They had the highest position. Second, you see the priests. They are the religious leader of the society. So they held the second position. At the third position, there were the scribes, who were the writers who used to write on the clay tablets. Since they knew the art of writing, they had a respect in the society, and so they held the third position. In the fourth position, in the fourth position, there were the craftsmen and peasants. They also had, to some extent, although they were the common people, but yet the economy was dependent on those craftsmen and peasants. So they had also a certain amount of respect in the society. But at the bottom, there existed the slaves, who were the slaves were usually the war prisoners, or who were bought and sold in the open market, and they were not given the status of human being, and they were bought and sold in the market like the commodities, and they were mainly the workers, and they held the position, lowest position in the society. So this particular picture will give you a clear idea about the social distinction in the society of Mesopotamia. So in image number 2, you may see the picture of the king and queen. How well dressed they are. They are wearing valuable ornaments, most probably made of gold and silver, decorated with precious stones. And from the picture, it is quite clear that they held the highest position in the society. In image 3, you may see the king who is at the center holding a stick in his hand. He is a king, and he is accompanied by his nobles. The nobles are also well dressed, and from there we have an idea about the higher social positions which they held. In image 4, you may get a picture of the common people. These are the statues, and you just notice the common people. They are standing helplessly. It seems they are very much helpless, and they are holding the hands like in this manner. And from this picture, we may have an idea that the common people were very much subjugated by the upper class people. For example, the king, the nobility, and priest, like this. In image 5, you may see a couple of the upper class people. So you may notice the well dressed, they are very much well dressed and wearing the ornaments, and this is the picture of a couple of any upper class family. In image 6, this is the training for writing on clay tablets. Some boys, they are being given the training for being the writers or the scribes. Now they are trying to write on the clay tablets, and they are taking the lessons from the elders in this respect. In image 7, you may see a marriage ceremony in Mesopotamia. You see the bride is sitting at the opposite, the groom is sitting and the family members are sitting together, and the marriage ceremony is going on. So this is all about today's discussion. Thank you.